Some other girl and guy would love this swirling sky.
This is perhaps the most famous scene from the film La La Land, and to better understand where it takes its inspiration from, we have to go back in time a bit. Actually, we have to go back even further, all the way back to the 1935 film Top Hat, and more specifically, the song Lovely Day.
That as far as I'm concerned, it's a lovely day.
In this scene, two characters are caught in a thunderstorm and forced to take shelter. Up to this point, both characters have been coy with each other, only hinting at the idea of a relationship. But here, Jerry, played by Fred Astaire, comes to the conclusion that despite the rain, being there with her makes it feel like a lovely day, which is a sentiment she eventually reciprocates. And after the song ends, the relationship begins to grow.
Oh, my darling.
Hello.
And when you compare this to the scene from La La Land,
What a waste of a lovely night.
You'll notice more than a few similarities. Both scenes take place around the 1/4 mark and introduce the idea of a relationship between the main characters. They also follow the same film structure and movement. Both songs are filmed in one take or the illusion of one take and prioritize large sweeping camera movements. They also both start with a song and then devolve into dancing and even end with the characters looking at each other. And notice the movement of the characters. In both scenes they follow each other in terms of lateral movement and individual dance move. But this direct homage shouldn't come as much of a surprise since it's the entire basis of the film.
Basically the whole idea behind it was to try to take what I loved about those movies and bring it into today.
One thing that's always bothered me about contemporary musicals is that they seem to prioritize style over substance, often utilizing new technology to create more dynamic and complicated shots, while forgetting what elements make the scene important. Take the 2021 remake of West Side Story.
I like it a lot.
And in particular, the song America.
I like to be in America. Okay, by me in America.
On its own, the song seems fine, but when you compare it to the original, you'll immediately notice one glaring difference. While the original takes place entirely on a single rooftop, the remake utilizes 21 distinct locations, from different streets, to markets, and even a boxing gym. It's constantly moving settings in order to help visualize the lyrics.
Buying on credit is so nice.
One look at us and they charge twice.
The problem is, this song isn't meant to be a spectacle, and the intimacy of the moment and the lyrics are lost when you're constantly moving locations. Rather than focusing on the acting and the individual performance of the dancers, you get caught up in the different backgrounds and the numerous extras in the scene. This isn't helped by the fact that the original is shot on a nearly stationary camera, letting the dancers' movements do the blocking, while the newer version utilizes a handheld camera to constantly frame the performers. This impact can also be felt in the editing. When you change locations, you have to constantly cut the scene, and it ruins the pacing and the flow of the singing and dancing. Compare this to the original, with its longer takes and seamless cuts, and when you combine that with the smaller space, the energy is only intensified.
Life is alright in America.
If you're all white in America.
These are just a few of the details I find modern musicals are lacking, and I'm not trying to say they're all bad, but it serves to highlight what makes La La Land feel so special. In La La Land, the musical numbers are born out of the story, and for the highway scene, it sets up the rules and the fantasy of the film.
It was basically, here is as big as the style is going to get, because we had to, you know, I think especially today, you gotta, if you're going to do a musical, proclaim it, and so let them know what this world is capable of.
This is crucial for the film going forward, as numerous moments seem to break from reality into a more dreamlike state. In the observatory scene, we the audience aren't entirely sure where reality ends and the fantasy begins. We can question how they got inside or how they suddenly begin floating, but the reality is, it doesn't matter.
If you're emotional enough, if you're in love enough, the rules don't apply anymore. In a way, it's why you do a musical. Only a musical really allows you to fully express that emotion. You can't express it with just traditional realist cinema. So yes, they do literally fly into space.
And the same thing happens at the very end of the film.
They float out into this fantasy of LA and their life that could be.
And since these moments could only happen in musicals, it's fitting that the only time La La Land slips into overt fantasy is during its musical scenes.
There's a real balancing act between those dreams and reality, and to me, actually, the musical as a genre is a great vehicle for expressing that balancing act. So with La La Land, I wanted to tell that story, but use music, use song and dance to express it.
So the fantasy elements of the songs were nailed down, but there's still the reality of the rest of the film. In order for the dreamlike moments to be impactful, the rest of the film had to feel real, and that proved to be harder said than done.
One of the hardest things as we went through the process of choreographing La La Land was figuring out the bridge from normal people just doing everyday things, everyday gestures, and how does that then move to dance?
To solve this, they turned back to the very classic musicals that inspired the film in the first place.
A lot of the iconic LA movies, you know, from old Hollywood movies like Sunset Boulevard.
I like it better than any street in the world.
And Singing in the Rain.
Just singing in the rain.
A Star is Born.
Put a double on that 90.
Movies that kind of make LA a character. And then the French New Wave, you know, pictures from the 60s, The Umbrellas of Cherbourg.
Mon amour, mon amour.
Young Girls of Rochefort.
Mais sous le signe des Gémeaux.
It should feel very seamless, and you should be kind of guided into a number so that you almost don't even realize the number's about to begin, and then you're like, oh, it feels inevitable.
But the rhythm of La La Land doesn't stop at just the build-up to the individual songs, it carries over to the entire film.
Begin in one extreme, then ground it through the actors, try to tell a story that then allows us to emotionally build back up to that extreme.
Just examine every major musical number in the film. First, we have the highway scene, with a large group of people performing a huge showstopper. Then we have a slightly more private scene involving Mia and her 3 roommates.
That's someone in the crowd.
This ends with a brief party scene and a smaller group of people. Then we have a lovely night, and now it's only Mia and Seb.
You're right, I'd never fall for you at all.
And finally, we get a scene where Seb is singing on his own.
Are you shining just for me?
This same rhythm of crescendo followed by smaller intimate moments is repeated with the observatory scene and jazz club to the City of Stars reprise, and then again with the jazz concert to the final song where Mia is now singing on her own. And even her singing has a rhythm to it. Early in the film, Mia sings very light and airy.
Finally come true.
But at her solo audition, she finally finds her voice, speaks her truth, and belts.
And that's why they need us.
And finally, the film ends with one last showstopper, letting it and the intro act as bookends to the film.
Symmetrically was that then it takes the whole movie to sort of work our way back up to that world, and so at the end of the movie when they're on the studio soundstage, we bring back those same dancers and even the same freeway motifs, except now it's in a soundstage environment. So it was a little bit of that too, to have the movie be a full circle.
So we've discussed the rhythm leading up to the songs, but what about the songs themselves? Well, this is where choreography, and more importantly editing, come into play. Like the original West Side Story, many of La La Land's set pieces take place in smaller, isolated areas, giving each of the songs a certain energy and level of intimacy.
I'll always remember the flame.
And perhaps La La Land's most notable homage to classic film is its propensity to shoot the musical numbers in longer, unbroken takes, allowing us to focus more on the choreography and acting in the scene.
What? What?
Even when objects are in the way, the film continues its themes of fantasy by moving them to allow the camera to move where it shouldn't be able to.
The desk that the two people are sitting at actually splits in half to let the camera go through. And so that was part of the noise. It splits in half, goes around her, comes back, and then comes back together while she's singing.
Yeah.
Even scenes where the characters are seemingly in two different locations, the team still treats it as though they were on the same stage. In this scene, they could easily have filmed both parts separately and used the whip pan as a transition, but instead, they did everything live and in camera. And while the editing is crucial for the musical elements, they only make up a small portion of the film, and Chazelle wanted to match the melodic quality of the classic films that inspired him.
They feel the horse is coming back.
Well, where's he been?
These films had a way of using the dialogue and the pacing of the edit to create a sort of melody throughout the entire film. And in order to achieve this, you need the editor one last time.
You know, I love that you can literally create a sense of music just through editing, even if there's no music on screen. That was an idea I love, and it was an idea that was really important in this movie, that even when there was no music on screen, it needed to still feel musical at every moment.
It's through details like this that allow La La Land to stand apart from so many contemporary musicals. It's fantasy combined with spontaneity, escapism instead of subtext, and through something as simple as singing and dancing, shows us movies can still be magical.
I'm a phoenix rising from the ashes.
I'm Luke.
No, Jamal. You be tripping.
Thanks for watching.